Welcome to Goalie Science, the podcast where we try to bridge the gap between theory and practice of hockey goaltending. This week, we are brought to you by my GitHub page where I post blogs about advanced goaltending analytics. You can check it out. Link will be in the description of this podcast, or hop on over to my Instagram or Twitter. This ad is paid for by Jamie Phillips' Patreon, which you can support as always at patreon.com. Search for Jamie Phillips. Jamie, how are you doing this week?
Hello, I'm coming from you from my barren bedroom. If you're watching this on YouTube, you'll see that my normal backdrop is not the same. All my large items, including my desk, which is my pride and joy, has been moved out of my apartment. So I currently am broadcasting you from a kitchen chair, and my webcam is balancing on my suitcase. So times are tough, you know.
You're getting the Jamie Phillips before the Jamie Phillips World Tour.
Oh, speaking of the Jamie Phillips World Tour, I'm gonna vlog some stuff, and like all of it. But I want to do a lot of interviews too, because especially Max Verdanen, who's running the camp with myself and Espo, one of his goalie coaches. Like, I'm curious to get more like talking points and like just talk to people in person. And it's weird because Ben and I have never done a pod in person, yet I will be doing all these podcasts in person. Also, Ben, you should do some pods in person with, like, you're around a lot of experts in different disciplines. So I think you should do some in-person pods as well. But I'm excited for the World Tour. I got to figure out what I'm doing with all like my technical stuff. But Adobe did a really good job of your audio last week.
Perfect.
So why do I bother with these nice mics?
Look, if there's any lesson that we can give to all the listeners out there, it's that audio quality doesn't matter because technology of other things is fine. Right? That's the only thing
AI will do it for you.
Oh God. All right, Jamie. Last week we talked about the draft. I got some good feedback. People both loved and did not love the idea that European goaltenders can hang out in professional hockey for a while. People were fired up.
Yeah, the thing is, though,
it's like unfair advantage.
Okay, well, again, most of the fired upness comes from my Instagram page, which is literally just a 30-second snippet of the podcast that I honestly sometimes just choose at random. And so most of the things are taken out of context. And a lot of the people that got upset didn't actually listen to the podcast. They just saw a clip of us talking about European goalies, especially. And then also, like, usually it's like the vocal minority that speaks the loudest. And it's mostly like passionate Canadian fans that are upset that there is no like Carey Price in the league at this moment, and all the Russians are dominating and the Europeans are dominating. And so they a lot of people like grasp at straws, but the talking points that we had are all real things. And it's not that it's good or bad. It just is. Like, the European goalies at a point have an advantage over North American goalies in certain aspects of hockey, and specifically in the draft. Was there anything that stuck out to you in terms of the little bit of conversation? I'll be honest, I've been so busy that I have not been up to date with all the comments, but I know that you sometimes dive into them.
Yeah, no, nothing. The one thing I wanted to say, and this is going to be a little plug to the little article that I wrote earlier this week, is that I went back and looked at this season for Carter Hart. Carter Hart's been like a big, I don't know if polarizing is the right word, but he obviously has carried a lot of weight for the potential of Canadian goaltending.
It was like polarizing. It's just like everyone threw their eggs at, like, when you're deemed the next Carey Price and you are on a team that is not very strong and you don't play as well as Carey Price did, which very few goalies can and will, all of a sudden it's just like, and the whole media needs something to talk about. And it's better it gets more clicks to complain and say what's wrong. I'm sorry, I cut you off there, but I don't think it's polarizing. I think everyone just needed a scapegoat. Canadian hockey fans just needed a scapegoat and fell on his shoulders.
Yeah, so I wrote something that's a little bit in defense. I mean, some stuff I looked from this a little bit in defense, but from this past season, and you can read more about this, like I said, we'll link it, is that Carter Hart, when you looked at people who played as much as he did, and he played a lot, like 55 games, over 3,000 minutes this year. He was the number 3 goalie on high danger chances and save percentage in the league when you kind of looked at his numbers behind a couple guys named Sorokin and Saros. So he was a really good company. They're good, I hear, and it's going to be our pivot. But if you want to read more and see more about that, we'll link it in the show notes here, and Jamie will be sure to put it in the YouTube comments as well.
Yeah,
but actually,
this will be a plug. So like I'm not the stats and data guy. I don't get it. I'm not very good. I was talking about this the other day. I'm horrible at using the programming. The R programming language. I'm just awful at it. Ben is very good at this stuff, and I don't give Ben a lot of credit often, but he's very good at stats, and he's very well spoken at his blog posts, and like even the Instagrams on his shares and tags me in that I don't always look at are very well done. So go give Ben some love, and if you like the stats portion and you like nerding out on it, like check it out and share it, because Ben works really hard and he does a good job to make these like analytics that he's usually like the only one talking about these, and that's really cool.
Thanks, Pat. That's a nice plug. I'm going to take back my transition. So I'll say that Carter Hart only outperformed by a guy named Sorokin, and that's where we're going to take us off, Jamie. That was supposed to be my transition before your nice words, because we're talking about free agency today. We want to do a bit of a 20-minute run through of kind of some interesting stories that we identified from coming out of this offseason, coming out of free agency. And I wanted to tie them into your personal experience, and so people can really understand what free agency looks like, because we kind of see what it looks like at the top end for guys sitting out and guys arguing for more money. But we'd also, I think there's a really interesting story about what happens across, goaltending depth charts. And so I picked 5 main stories that I thought we could get through pretty quickly. My first one was that the Islanders re-signed Sorokin and Varlamov, who were awesome together last year. My official take on this, Jamie, is who cares? They're good. That's all I got for the Islanders. They're good goals.
Yeah, they're pretty set. They're good tier signings. Yep. They'll be fine. Varlamov's a steady backup.
Yep.
Sorokin, good.
Yeah, it turns out, just over $8 million a year. That's probably when he's good.
Or just for Sorokin.
No, just for Sorokin, 8.2 a year for Sorokin.
Yeah.
Varlamov's up.
I'd say that's
under 3, I think.
I would say that's pretty justified if you look at his skill and then compare it to a Vasilevsky or Bobrovsky, who are the $10 million men. Yeah, I would say that's $8 million is pretty good.
Yeah, 2.75 for Varlamov, so they get both their goalies in under at 11 million, and probably maybe the best tandem in the league, or one of the best tandems in the league, especially as Varlamov's going to play 35 games next year. Yep, and Sorokin's going to play in the mid-50s. So
yeah, no, there's nothing to be crazy about that.
Let's completely flip the script. Story number 2, a team that I have no idea what they're going to do at all is the Anaheim Ducks. So first and foremost, Anthony Stolarz, who, again, plug to my article, was the number 1 goalie who dealt with the worst game scenarios across the NHL last year. Number 1.
It's a crazy stat. Scenario. What a wild stat.
He actually was. So Stolarz did not have the world's best numbers, but his biggest struggling point is he got kind of pooched letting in a couple of just bad goals. The poor guy got absolutely peppered last year. So his numbers look worse because he was one of the worst goalies in the league on low to injury chances. But he was exceptional at like all the crazy stuff that was happening in Anaheim. But Stolarz is off to Florida for $1.1 million. Gibson seemingly doesn't want to be back at all.
Yeah. Okay.
Does not want to be back. So I'm assuming gone. Let's just assume gone.
Yeah.
Which is where we lead to. So at this state, if Gibson is done and there's no signing, the Ducks are going to wheel out Lucas Dostal as their starting goalie, who's 23. He played 20 games last year out in Anaheim, and they were more towards the end of the season. But beyond that, it gets really interesting. So I went through kind of all the depth charts of what's going on. Anaheim's got in San Diego last year, they had Gage Alexander, who is one of the most interesting stories that I've just learned of since actually looking up and preparing for this episode. He played 16 WHL games across 2 years before being drafted in the 5th round. That's right. He played 9 games and then 7 games.
Was he injured?
Different seasons. You know what? Maybe, but it was also COVID-y. So he was drafted in 2020. So COVID influenced for sure. He's 6'6". He was drafted in his plus 1 year.
Okay.
So a bit of an interesting scenario, but last year he played 15 games in SWIP Current in the WHL, 16 games in San Diego, and 6 games in Tulsa. So as it currently stands, that could be your second or third goalie on your depth chart. Wild. And then it gets kind of stranger because the next goalie is Cal Duplan, 2020 third round pick, also born in 2002. So as it currently stands, the Ducks' top 3 goalies, assuming Gibson doesn't come back, is 23, 21, and 20.
Well, I've heard only good things about Calle Clan, so that's promising. The second thing, I guess my second point is, I know that we'll get into Buffalo in a bit, and you had previewed that, but Eric Comrie is from that Anaheim area, so I'm gonna go.
That's your Demko.
And so is Thatcher Demko. So I'm going to go and throw this out on the limb, but I say Eric Comrie becomes an Anaheim Duck. And Combs and I are good friends, and when this happens, everyone's like, inside scoop. It's not. I haven't talked to Combs about it. I probably will after this podcast is recorded. But now that we're talking about this, that popped to my mind. So I do think that when we get into Buffalo and they have a surplus of goalies, they're going to have to do something with them. And when someone has too many, they need to move them when someone doesn't have enough. I say Comrie ends up in Anaheim. I don't think Vancouver would get rid of Demko at this point.
No, Demko's coming off. The 2020 season, he was ridiculous. It's kind of struggled since then, but he was absolutely ridiculous. Again, I came with some facts today, Jamie. Comrie had last season in Buffalo this is very specific, but on the penalty kill, had the most dangerous penalty kill experience in the NHL last year. So just absolutely peppered on the PK. In fact, he was 25% more peppered on the PK than any other goalie in the NHL. So
wow,
he just
crazy.
Anyways, you look at his numbers. He had pretty good numbers considering how hard quality of competition and quality of games he had was. So I think again, Anaheim's to have to make a move. I think honestly, Comrie might be a good fit. We'll kind of get to another couple names where I think some of these teams are likely to move a goalie. So note to self, text Comrie, Jamie.
Yeah, text. But going back to Anaheim, we don't know. They need to do something.
Yeah.
They need to get someone who has a lot more NHL experience than what they have, unless they're going for a pure rebuild. We don't care if we lose every game kind of scenario. And if that's what they're doing, then that's a good organization to be a young goalie in.
Yeah, the reason I brought them up again is it's a unique situation, but they also have a lot of high-end player talent this year. So if you're looking, and again, let's assume nothing happens, Gibson moves out, they don't get a goalie back. If you're going to be looking for entertaining games, it'll be Ducks games this year for sure. Okay, you mentioned it before. Let's transition right away. We're going over to Buffalo, Jerry. This offseason, they signed Devin Cooley and Dustin Tokarski for 1 year at $775 each, so league minimum at, guys that are presumably going to be in the AHL to start the year. But on top of that, they have Eric Comrie, as you just mentioned. They have Devin Levy signed, and they still currently hold, I'm not entirely sure what the exact specifics are, but they still currently hold on to Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, who is signed through the 2024 season. So that's 5 goalies with NHL games on your roster.
Well, Tokarski will be in the American League for sure. Yeah. Interesting what they're going to do with UPL. Levi will probably. Yeah. We've talked about this again. There's no point sending him to the American League. He's just shown he can play in NHL. I think just sending him to the American League is not going to do anything for him unless he's struggling to start. Then you want him to find some confidence or whatever.
Yeah.
And then with Comrie, I think he's going to end up in Anaheim.
Or they don't
do anything, and then
they keep Levi.
Yeah, and then Cooley goes to. Are they still with Cincinnati?
I actually don't know.
So they'll East Coast, and then Buffalo Rochester always signs Hauser, and so Hauser will be their American League East Coast up and down guy. Yeah,
It's
I guess like
a lot of goalies.
five NHL contracts is like it's not always a lot. None of them are on entry levels.
Levi.
Oh, Levi, yeah, I guess Levi is, but it's hard to consider him on ELC because he's just like straight to the NHL.
Yeah, he's actually just I mean, it's again like their goaltending is like not expensive, right? Like even with all those goalies, like I think Comrie is the most expensive goalie on that list of the spot, right? And so
Yeah,
from a money perspective, Buffalo's not spending a lot of money for. And again, like I said, Comrie got absolutely shelled last year. That's out of his control. That's your goalie. You're stuck with that. He was pretty good. And then Levi again. We've talked about this. If Levi goes to the AHL, I'll be so surprised. He should play like 30 games in the NHL this year. There's no reason.
I have a feeling they might just try to ride Levi. Like I guess it's weird because Buffalo's been bad for so many years. At some point, like they need to like start to win a lot of games. And it's not that Levi's like can't do it. It's just typically the way a GM would think. They'll be like, well, let's get someone consistent or someone we know is gonna, play a lot of games at this level. So I would be surprised if they ran it, but if maybe they want to go 1A, 1B with Comrie, Levi, I think that's okay because both are capable goalies. But I still think Comrie to Anaheim.
I like it. I like the prediction. I would not be surprised if we see Buffalo.
Or Buffalo picks up Hellebuck.
Oh,
because I don't know if Winnipeg was.
I've heard Hellebuck to like.
I don't know if Winnipeg's on your list, but I know Hellebuck does not want to return to the Peg.
I also heard that he's floating around 9.5 as his re-signing number,
which probably is just warranted. If Sorokin's getting 8, we got like and he's got a Vezina.
Yeah.
He's pretty good. I mean, I guess Helly just
he's also
not
in his 30s though.
The beautiful city of Winnipeg. Shout out Winnipeg and Stella's Cafe. Eat there twice a day for 9 months when I lived in the Delta Hotel. So if you're listening, go to Stella's Cafe and tip your waitress or waiter.
And this episode brought to you by Tourism Manitoba. Speaking of similarly climated places, the LA Kings have an interesting story, which I'm pretty sure no one's talking about, but this is the first one that I wanted to really throw to you, Jamie. LA, like a lot of teams are doing, have essentially three NHL guys that they've signed. They have Phoenix Copley, they have close personal friend of the podcast, Cam Talbot, and they have David Rittich, who are all on 1-year deals. So LA, like 25 other goal teams in the league, are essentially running a 3 NHL caliber goalie system at this point now.
Which
wherever it is,
which they should, which every team should.
Yep, you should. Yep. And I mean, we made the argument that like your AHL team should be probably composed of a guy who can play in the NHL, and then your number one development. Yeah. And if your AHL team's not doing that, which some of these other teams we've kind of mentioned don't seem like they are doing, that's our thoughts on that at least. But I have 2 stories here that I think are interesting. The first one is this year, Matt Villalta, who is a former 4th-round pick of LA, walked in a free agency, signed in Arizona. And so the first story is Villalta never played a game in the NHL, but he played a lot of games in the AHL in Ontario. And I was just wondering about this. What is that? As an organization, you draft a player, you draft a goalie who's been good in the AHL, never gets into the NHL, and is now just out of your system. Like that draft pick is, I guess you got minor league Phil out of them.
That's what I was.
Right. Which is going to be my next story. Hold the ball. But that's all it is, right? Like essentially, that's it. You just got to fill out your roster, I guess.
You just got to fill some spots. And so going back to the 3 goalie situation, Talbot obviously not going to the American League. I don't think David Rittich has played in the American League for a long time, or ever. Maybe in Milwaukee when he was with he signed for 7.75. Oh, he signed league min, but probably the last time he was in the American League was with Milwaukee when he was with Nashville, right? Phoenix. The thing is too is Phoenix. I think they signed Phoenix for.
Sorry, he signed for $875. I'm sorry, he signed for $875. Okay. Sorry, David Rittich.
And then Phoenix signed for what? 1.1, 1.3.
I had it called. Oh, I have the cap from. We're good. Riddick at 875 and Phoenix at 1.5.
Okay, so that's basically double. That's interesting what they're going to do, because like I said, I can't tell you the last time Riddick played in the American League, where Phoenix split the year last year, and he earned that $1.5 million. And no, I'm not saying because he's my friend, but he objectively earned that, and I think he earned a spot. That's why I would be disappointed if but disappointed but not surprised if he started in the American League, because someone has to, just based off of his play last year. But I'm hoping that it goes Talbot, Copley, Riddick, and then, like we were talking about, after that, if they don't have anyone in the pipeline to develop, you just fill it with you just probably sign somebody, and you just don't. There's not like, you just need to fill spots. That's it.
So this was what I was going to say. So what's interesting with them losing Villalta, I think the most likely situation is that you're going to see Eric Portillo, Michigan goalie.
Oh, I'd rather have Portillo, yeah.
Yeah. So, but what's the story that I want to really bring up, which I found, again, aside from the Villalta story, which I think is an interesting situation, I think it's a good signing by Arizona. But the interesting case is that David Hrenek, former fifth-round pick, St. Cloud State goalie, you would have coached against him when he was at St. Cloud State in 2022. He played the most minor league games out of basically anyone in that Kings system last year. He played 43 games in Greenville in the ECHL last year, first year pro. He just signed a 2-year deal in the Czech Republic. He's gone. Just left 1 year into his pro deal. See you.
So how old was he when he signed, though?
He would have signed after. So he got drafted in 2018 as an 18-year-old. So he signed at 22, played 1 year. He's now in the Czech.
Oh, so he did leave money on the table. Because I wasn't sure if he got a 1 year deal. Probably just not happy with the organization. To be honest with you, it is a little uncommon for a North American guy to just, is he North American?
He's from East Czech.
Oh, okay. Then that's not that. He probably was just sick. To be fair, like, a lot of the European guys do not like playing in the coast. They for them, it's like, why would I play in this league where you ride buses and you eat soggy subs when I could just go back home and be happy, and so they leave. They leave, and if they don't think the organization values them, they take off. And then if they do well, they just get re-signed somewhere else, and that's it.
I thought it was interesting. And then last team I want to talk about before, and this is the one that I really, really made me kind of think of you and your story a little bit and wanted to kind of tie it in. But it is the Pittsburgh Penguins, who Tristan Jarry at $5.375 million, Casey DeSmith at $1.8 million, Nedeljkovic at $1.5 million, and Magnus Hellberg also signed. So the Pittsburgh Penguins have 4 NHL goalies on their roster. And that is before we acknowledge the fact that they also have Joel Blomqvist, the 2020 second-round pick who played last year in the Finnish Elite League before coming over for a little bit in the AHL. So you have a 2020 second-round pick, someone who has been good in a professional hockey league in Europe, and he is now your 5th goalie on your depth chart.
So Pittsburgh isn't afraid to send Europeans to Wheeling. When I was in the coast, they had a guy, Emil something. He ended up voiding his contract and going back to Finland. Now he plays in, I think he just won the Liga Championship, maybe. So they're not afraid to send their guys down there. The credit to Pittsburgh is their development model is very good from the Pittsburgh, Wilkes-Barre, Wheeling pipeline. They do a good job at keeping everyone engaged, keeping everyone involved. I mean, obviously, DeSmith, Jarry are the number 1 and 2. I just don't. They would never put Nedeljkovic or Hellberg in the coast. So I feel like that guy, he's just gonna play in the coast, and it is what it is. Like, it's just one of those things. It is what it is. Like that's it. Like, someone gets hurt, anything, maybe they decide to move someone. Like Nick Hellberg seems to be like just a classic chess piece where you just move him around wherever and try to get. He's like more of a throw-in guy, like, which is kind of hard situation. Like you see, he was on like what 3 teams last year in the course of like 2
Ottawa,
weeks.
Seattle. Yeah.
Yeah, and
He's
Detroit
picked him on waivers all the time. Yep.
all the time, and because he's tall, he's pretty good. Like he's steady. So I think they'll just start him and start the young guy in the coast, and then someone will be moved, and they'll bring him up if he does well. And then again, that's the thing too, is we talk about hockey as a business. You have all your, your boxes crossed, and you have extra. It doesn't really matter. They don't really care that much unless because if they really cared, you would be in the American League.
Yeah,
I'll just say call space. If they really cared, if you are not like your first year right out of junior or college, and even still, like you're probably in the American League if they really cared. So not that it's a bad thing. It's just that if you get buried there, don't be bitter, because it means you're probably not in the right organization.
Yeah, and ultimately Pittsburgh's got a couple guys named, Sidney Crosby and Kenny Malkin. They're pretty firmly set on win now mode. And if that means having 4 goalies, that if anyone gets hurt, anyone plays, you have next guy up, right? But Jamie, this is where we're going to tie it in. So this is the old bait and switch. I pumped you up with the Joel Bloomquist. What are they going to do to this guy? But the real kicker is what's going to happen to a guy named Taylor Gauthier, 2001 born, 22 years old, undrafted out of the WHL, last played in Prince George and Portland. He played 20 games last year. You go, and essentially because of some injuries, some season-ending stuff, essentially moved into the 3rd on that Pittsburgh depth chart. He's now 6, maybe 7. I don't know actually who anyone is leaving the CHL under Pittsburgh property. And this is where
because it ties it into. So that's what I was. I was just a piece. I was a roster filler. Like there was no development model for me. There wasn't any plan. And any American leagues I got was because of any games I got was because of mainly injuries. Despite my play a good play in the East Coast League, it didn't really matter. Yeah, that sucks. It sucks couldn't be in that spot because it doesn't really matter how well you play in terms of that organization's eyes. It does matter in terms of getting opportunities elsewhere, although it is hard to get NHL contracts out of the East Coast League. It's much easier to get them when you've got a body of work in the American League. One of the things that my goalie coach in Manitoba would always say every time I played like an American League game, he'd always be like, it's just adding to your resume. And I'd always be like, yeah, but like I'm in this organization now. So I probably should have saw that little was that foreboding or just like a foreshadowing? Foreshadowing. Thank you. But yeah, this just sucks. And that's again that this business of sports, the business of athletics is it doesn't matter that he played 20 games. He might have been unbelievable in those 20 games. In Pittsburgh's eyes, he's just going to get shuffled down. He's going to fill a roster spot. If he does well, boom, some scout looks really good. And then if he doesn't, it doesn't really matter. But for his career, he needs to not let that, beat him down and wear him down. He needs to just understand that, like, this is what it is. I'm going to play well. I'm going to open up doors somewhere else or in Europe. And that's ultimately the goal. And that's just part of sports. And some people never are able to work their way up, just not because they're not good, just because the situation in front of them, it's what happens. It's like when I signed in Charlotte, they had 7 NHL contracts, and I was the 8th, and I was on the only American League deal. So it's just like, how is that even possible? They had guys on show deals on different East Coast teams,
and that's also what I wanted to talk to you about a little bit. Was we were going to wrap this up in a few minutes here, but let's end on what does that look like, dude? What does free agency look like? I mentioned it before. What does that look like when we get into these AHL versus you want an NHL deal, you're on an AHL deal? What do those different things look like, and what does that really mean? Can you give us like our best 60-second summary there?
Yeah, so typically when we think of free agent frenzy, we think of like classic TSN, Gordon Miller calling guys on FaceTime, and they're sitting at their Muskoka cottages just enjoying the couple $1 million they made. For the most of us that played, it's just a lot of unknown. It's just if you're, let's just say that you're like someone like me, someone who's just like, just a pro goalie. That's it. Like nothing crazy, just pro. And it's a lot of you play second class to your agent because you're not making a lot of money. They're all their attention is on their big guys. And that's no knock to agents or anything. That's just, that's the way it is. That's the way I did it too. So the big guys are all take all the attention, and you just kind of wait in the wingtips. And typically it takes like a week or two until like a lot of the big signings are done. And then you kind of hope that your phone rings. A lot of it too is like you have to network yourself. I got myself my East Coast, my second American League deal because I knew the goalie coach, knew the connection. My agent ended up like brokering it, but I was like, this is what I want. Like I kept being like, I got it. I said, Todd, my agent, call them. This is his deal. This is the money I want. I'm not taking less than this. And that was a bold move by me. But it's just a lot of waiting around and a lot of this is what you have on the table, take it or leave it kind of thing. Even after I retired, like I retired from hockey. I didn't really tell my agent I retired. I just retired. And then he called me one day and he's like, we have a bunch of offers. I don't know what you're doing. And I was like, I'm out. Like, I don't want to play. It's just a lot of unknowns. It's not exciting. It's not glamorous. It's very stressful. I couldn't imagine doing it if you have like family, like a wife and stuff. It's a lot of you just sit in the gym, work out, try not to get frustrated by other people that you think you're better than, that are signing for money that you think they shouldn't. And you just got to wait for your turn. Hopefully something comes up. And while that's going on, you're debating, do I go to Europe? Are you dealing, you're dealing with your European agent, your North American agent, and it gets stressful. So it's not super glamorous. It is very stressful, and it can take a long time. And then if you're even guys that are like lower down, you're at the mercy of what everyone else above you. Once the American League spots fill up, you're like, okay, I got to sign an East Coast deal, and those are 24-hour contracts, and it's not very glamorous to say the least. So I know that was longer than 60 seconds, but it's just a lot of waiting around and hoping that someone in some organization likes you.
Yeah, and I think the part that people definitely appreciate, or people don't also appreciate, is like, let's take the David Rittich example from before. Is he's going to make $875,000 whether he's playing in LA or whether he's playing in Ontario. That is not the case if you're on like an AHL deal, for example, right, Jamie?
Or an NHL 2-way.
You're signing, yeah, or an NHL 2-way, right? Where it's you're getting a different, and that's an example of like, we're going back to Pekka Luukkonen. He makes a third of what he makes if he plays in the AHL compared to when he's up in Buffalo. But that's the kind of reality of it. So we talked about this before about just everything's in business, obviously. But, if you're paying a goalie almost $1 million in your AHL team and you're a 20, 21-year-old trying to scramble for games, like you're going to be prioritized over just financially. Like,
however,
that's just
if you are an NHL one-way and you play in the American League, you don't have to pay NHL escrow on that money. So when I was playing with Ondrej Pavelec, he was making significantly. He was making $5.5 million a year, and so we were doing the math, and it came to around $60,000 a day he was making, and he'd be losing about 20% of that. 20, yeah, like that was pre-tax, 18%. So 20% would go to escrow. So he's making an extra 20%. Playing in the American League, actually, and then I was there, and he was making my annual contract in a day and a half. Actually, less than that, like 27 hours, and he would make my contract. So cool.
Yeah. We'll have to. I was talking to someone earlier. I promise that one day we'll get some Jamie Phillips, Ondrej Pavelec interaction stories. Maybe not. Maybe today's not the day, unless you want to end on.
There wasn't a lot. He was really nice to me, and he'd always buy nice bottles of wine for the fellas at the restaurants, and I appreciate that because I like wine, and I would have liked to have made $60,000 a day. My tuition bills wouldn't hurt as much, but 'tis life.
Yeah, we'll say some of that down today. But all right, let's wrap it up there. That was a really quick run through, just exploring some of the kind of interesting stories and just some of the realities from the top to the bottom of systems, and actually appreciating this is stuff that you and I might look at more closely, but ultimately, this is maybe something that teams, they're running businesses, they're in the business of winning. And so, you know what? Great. We had a prospect accidentally do well or a prospect do great. Who cares, right? We got to win now. We got to win fast. So, Jamie, what do you have to say to the people?
Thank you for listening, watching. Please like, subscribe, comment, share. Check out Ben's GitHub blog. It will be in the show notes on all things Spotify, Apple, and YouTube. Also, if you want me to buy Ben expensive bottles of wine, please subscribe to my Patreon. Lots of stuff going on. I knew I dropped a aerobic training program on there. I'm going to be doing in-season training. There's like a general program for all the Patreon subscribers and stuff. So it does, in a roundabout way, does help keep the pod going. So yeah, comment, like, share, subscribe. Looking forward to the European tour of episodes and the Ben's research lab of episodes. But like always, we just appreciate you guys for taking the time and listening to us ramble on.
Yeah, as always, people, if you have questions, Jamie is admittedly more swamped than I am right now. So I'm in charge of answering things. So any questions you have, any recommendations about the podcast, fire them my way. We will be sure to kind of look into it, cover it, and reach out to you and make sure we can line something up in the future. But Jamie, until next week.
Till next week.